Yay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Living Ascension. Oh, apparently we're very blue this morning. That's very soft and flowy, watery.
Right. Or blue sky.
Blue sky. Yeah, we have, well, you said you have rain there. We have blue skies today.
Yes, we have rain, which for me is a blue sky day.
Oh. So part 3, as we knew this was going to be like an endless connection now on the masculine and feminine, the superiority, the inferiority. Oh, see, I was already yawning and haven't even started. So really we got to talking about a bunch of things, and then this sort of boiled down at the end of our conversation, like, oh no,
Right.
this is the topic, right, for next week, for this week. So and it's really talking about this whole our origin of passion, because we always talk about live your passion, right? Well, this is that's the new catchphrase, live your passion, right? And I don't call it, I don't use it as using a catchphrase. I use it because it's like living your bliss, living your, like what I used to say is what makes your heart sing, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so there is an element to that that is very masculine and very feminine. And that's what we were sort of looking at is, so is it really our passion? And what is passion? Because we talk about passion in terms of emotion and all this kind of stuff, but that would be more ego, which would be more masculine energy, right?
Right.
And separation based. So it's like, so really, what is the passion? Because sometimes we say, oh, that's my passion, and I'm just going to put my whole life to it. But is it because it gives you an ego's,
right? And is that your passion because it simply to the ego satisfies a need?
Right. A need of, makes you feel valuable, makes you feel like you're worthy, all that kind of stuff. And so so here's the thing, the ego is very defensive when you question it, right? So when you say, is that truly your passion? Of course it's my passion. That's all I want to do. Right.
Right. And it's your passion until someone questions it, or until there's a perceived negative backlash from it.
Right.
Or a self-judgment as a result of it. Then it's like, never mind.
Right.
Wasn't my passion after all.
Right. And what I say to people is this, what is it that you would be thrilled to be doing, right? Even if there was nobody else involved, right? Meaning, there was
the
nobody
only person on the earth.
Right. There was nobody to help. There was nobody to save. There was nobody this, because this is a lot of times what we get caught up in our value system is what's going to make me valuable. And oh, I'm worthwhile because I just like helping people. Right. You hear that all the time. Right. And it's like, well, but the helping people is actually very self-centered, because underneath it all, it's because it makes me feel good when people think I'm a good person for helping them. Right. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We're not judging it. This is just looking at things differently. And we're looking at through this filter, the masculine versus the feminine energy. So when we truly, to me, I've been looking at that a lot lately. A lot of us have, because it's like, well, what truly is my passion, right? What truly is my passion? What am I doing because I do it for valuation outside of me, or what am I doing just because I love doing it, right?
Or financial reward.
Right. And so the question is, if there's nobody else doing, what would allow you to express yourself in such a way that you felt like that it was the be all end all, right? So that's what makes your heart sing, right? And to me, that's the things that are easy to you, that you feel like I would, this is just fun and enjoyable, and all I do is saturate myself in my bliss with this, right? When I can do this from my being, right? And this is where we started talking about the masculine and feminine energy last.
And it's almost one of those things where you almost discount it because it's so easy for you, because it's like, oh, well, that can't be it because I've always loved that. So that's not something to discover.
Right. Right. So, but it's the thing that's, so, like I think about this one client, and I love the way she had really worded this for me, which was, when I started working with her, like she had wanted to do something with her life. And it was something that had always really made her tick. Right. But then she never felt like she could make into a living kind of thing. Right. Because this is where we switch.
How do you monetize it?
How do you monetize it? And I remember like when I first talked to her about it, and I just said, it was like, I just had to give her permission. She just needed to get permission from somebody. So I just said, do it. And, at the time she had this multi-million-dollar business in another field and, all this other stuff in her life. And she just felt like she was in a depression. She's like, why am I, at the time, I think at the time she was in her late 30s and early 40s. And she's like, why do I feel like, my life is over, and I'm like, well, like, but from the outside you're going, but you have this multi-million-dollar business and you have this and
Right,
blah, blah, blah. So she wanted to do this one thing. And I said, well, go ahead and do it. Like, do it for fun. Just do it. Like, why are you not doing it? Right.
right, right.
And so fast forward, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, she just started. And what happened was she started doing it, and everything, all these weird things aligned, right? To support her in doing
coincidences.
Yes, supposed coincidences that aligned to support her in doing more of it. And as she started doing more of it, and actually almost made money on it almost right away, which was funny because she hadn't even intended on that, right? She was like, she came back to me and she said, okay, so now that's sort of ruined the rest of everything else. And I said, why is that? And she said, because it's like, I suddenly feel like I'm doing this. And it's like, she's like, ever seen those like black and white movies and you see one thing that's in color? She goes, all of a sudden this thing is in color. This thing is saturated and color and vibrance. And she's like, and everything else in contrast, I feel like in my life is black and white. And she goes, so now I'm like, well, I want everything to be this saturated. Like, I want this in my life because this is what's worth getting up in the morning for. And so to me, that was like one of the best examples. And she went about doing that. And it was a long process of changing a lot of things. That she sold the business and she changed her entire life and whatever. And that's neither here nor there. And now she's finally, and she's taken steps there. And the funny part is, every time, like for several times, she's gotten close to really being able to support herself doing it. Then she's like, there's something in her that goes, oh no, this is too easy. You can't support, you're not worthy of supporting yourself doing this way because you love this so much. And you have to go support yourself someplace else.
Or it'll ruin it.
Yes.
Because I've heard so many times, particularly in my family, that, if you try to make a business out of your hobby or what you love, you'll ruin it, because what you love about it is not the business, it's the actual act of doing it. And you have to have that marriage. And that always brings me back to what we've been talking about beliefs that some energies, they're mutually exclusive.
Right. And so like, that's what we have believed, right? Is, oh no, well, A, it can't be easy, B, it can't be fun, and it can't be lucrative all at the same time. One has to, it's either you focus. I mean, our generation, right? We got brought up with, you work hard, you earn your paycheck, and then you do your stuff on the weekends that you like to do.
And you work and you live and you function for retirement. And that's when you really live.
Right. Except most of the people I know in that generation retired and then didn't do anything but sat home.
Right.
But anyway, the thing is, that's the masculine versus the feminine, right? The masculine is the create, control, manage, right? The feminine is the like create through connection and flow and wholeness, right? And allowance versus forcing, allowance versus forcing, which is two different things, right? And so the thing that is important for us to start to embrace now is this energy of allowing them both to combine. We can have a business doing what we love, right? That's actually the optimal melding of both worlds, right? And we can enjoy the business side as much as we can enjoy the other, whatever that is, side, right? We can enjoy all of it. And the other thing that, the other thing that I have really started looking at is when so doing comes from the ego, and doing is create, like forcing, management, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, what do I have to do? Control, right? And being is simply presence, right? Presence and allowing that full saturation in every moment.
Right.
So think about that. I just use the word saturation in the same kind of context, but in a different sense. And it's like, because we're so used to, in this set of dimensions, we're so used to doing to be. It's like we're doing to be. Like, oh, once I do this, I will be this. Once I do this, I will be this, right? That's the way
it's like playing a board game. Once I get to this level, or even a video game, once I get to this level, then I'll have all of this.
Right.
Like it's an automatic.
Right. And the thing to shift to is, I am this, I am being this, and all of my doing comes from this. That's a completely, and then guess what? Then everything you touch, everything you do, whether it is making a sandwich for lunch or what you like, love and are passionate about, that's all infused with that being, that saturation. And so that's the combination of both. That's allowing it in a way that really supports the ego's identity of creation, and then the feminine energy of connection and wholeness, right? To say, well, it's all, and by the way, when we say, okay, I'm going to do from being, then it seems like, I don't know about you, but it seems like when I do things from that being place, it feels like everything is synchronistic. Everything then leads back to the same place, even if it looks like it's completely, like not that way. And so it becomes so much easier to create. Right. So to me, that's the management of both, or the interrelation, the interconnectedness and melding of both into allowing ourselves that passion. And when we say that, because like that's the thing is, I know you have said, you're like, well, but it's what like the word passion in itself is sort of egoic, which it is, because it invokes this emotion and like fire and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. The key is we've not questioned our motives, right?
Right. The underlying energies.
The underlying energies of why something is our passion.
Right. Well, it's interesting in infusing my weekend with this after our conversation on Friday. My biggest metaphor for everything right now is my passion of crocheting. And it's like I identify with it and I flow with it until I make a mistake. And boy, then it's like, okay, well, this is just not for me. And you're ready to throw everything away. And then when I take a look, when I stop myself and say, okay, what is it about this that triggers me? Because that's exactly what it is. And it's my passion disguised as, well, I'm going to control this. I'm going to control this. So I very much saw how I had fooled myself into believing that, oh no, this is really your passion, when it was actually just another level of control. And so I was like, okay, so that's not my passion. But actually, as I came full circle back around, and I'm working on a really big project, so and it's circular, so typically you create a repeat of the same stitches and then you just finish one repeat and then you begin it again. So as I got to a place of allowing myself to actually internalize that repeat, it all came from that place of me, my creation of that, when I could see the logic of why the pattern was the way it was. And to me, that was the melding of not being controlled by the pattern and not that, but allowing that infusion and that balance to bring it in, to allow it to be truly my passion.
Right.
So it's not a question of, it's going to flow perfectly all the time. It's going to bring you messages and insights. And it's like, almost don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look at it. And if it truly isn't for you, then that's not your passion.
Well, or it was for a moment and it doesn't need to be anymore.
Exactly.
The thing is too, to remember the passion comes from the being, right? So when you purposely, then that's the other thing is, like when you purposely just infuse everything you do with that beingness, right? And you align, like what I've been setting myself to do is like everything that I do is just aligned with my authentic resonance, right? That we talked about, what was it, like 4 weeks ago now, right? Or something
I think so. Yeah.
And so like I said that, and like, so to me, it's like, okay, then everything you do ends up being something you're passionate about, because it just simply flows through in that saturation, no matter what you're doing.
And I can funnel or channel my passion into this.
Yeah.
Into this doing, or into this doing, or into this doing.
Right. And it's almost like the passion is fueled from a sense of creation, right? So what are you creating? Absolutely. And in what way? Right. And so like with me, I finally got around to starting to refinish my dining room table and chairs, that I've been talking about for like 4 years. And I was like,
gosh, is it 4? Doesn't seem that long.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. And then it was like, okay. And then, it's funny because then the doer is going, oh, I want to get this done. Right.
Exactly. Forget the journey. Let's get that to that end product so I can show everybody.
I know. And then it was like, and it was like, enjoy every step, enjoy the being that you get to be while you're doing, right? Because it's such an active presence. And, it was like, it was great because it was like, sanding down the wood, like, as I just started with the chairs yesterday, it was like sanding down the wood and like, and it was funny because looking at every nick, this table we've had for 29 years, right? And we're like, or 28 years. And I'm like, like, where did these nicks come from on it? Like, these are dining room chairs. Like, where did this come from? And it was just such presence of, and then like feeling the energy and then like sort of refreshing and the energy of refreshing the chair and refreshing the whole thing and sanding it down and like smoothing it out. And it's like, wow, we do that all the time in different ways. And it was like, and just allowing myself to be present with it just changed everything, right? And infused it with that different kind of color, right? That saturation and even it's a different form of creation, everything that we do, right? Whether it's cooking or, even getting dressed in the morning and creating who you're going to be that day. Right.
And we tend to think that we're limited in that and in saying, oh, well, I have to bring all that I believed I was yesterday into today. And maybe we don't. Maybe we can start fresh every day. Right.
And just from a place of being every day. If I start from a place of being, what am I being today? Not what am I doing? What am I being today?
Right.
And then allow ourselves to just align in that resonance and that authentic resonance with that being of whatever that is today in this moment in everything we do. Then it's like, oh, well, that's easy. Like it becomes easier. And then we don't think so much because the ego or the mind kicks in and it's like, well, how do I do this? And how do I do that? And, we assume, we make all these assumptions. It was funny. I was having a conversation with somebody last week and we're talking about, like we sit there and what do we say? Well, I need to pay my electricity bill. I need to pay my mortgage, blah, 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 blah. Right.
Right.
And she goes, but then do we? Like, what if we didn't? Like, would it really like, and it's like, well, but the mind says, oh, but logic says this, and this would happen. Right. And it's like, well, yeah, like maybe like some grant would come through and just pay for it for your, like, you just never know, like all this kind of stuff. And it's
Or
like,
or they may not notice that you haven't paid.
right.
And you may just continue to get electricity.
And people might laugh at that, but it's happened. Right.
Right.
And so, there's different ways of being. So when we start to infuse all of it, that's the whole thing, that all of life is our passion, all of it. Right. Then we can say everything we do is our passion. Everything we do is our, saturation. And
well, and it takes away the search and comes back to just the being. And then you can refine it. Then you can, really examine it and observe it and say, okay, so I don't want this little piece, and I don't want this little piece, or I want this little piece to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me infuse that with that difference.
Right. Right. And it was funny because in thinking about what we've been talking about with that, what was interesting was, I talked about the party we had here the other weekend, and my aunt had said some interesting things. But it was interesting. My aunt had come up and she had said, well, you're just a fabulous homemaker. And it was really funny that it triggered me and felt like it was an insult, because I'm like, what do you mean I have a business? That's not my focus. Like, it was just such a weird thing. And I was like, yeah. Like, and there's no offense meant to anybody who considers themselves that. But what hit me this weekend is, no, because what happens is this: when we get to a place of being, when we are living what we love to do, right, and love to be, we do infuse it with everything else. And it's not just being a homemaker, it's being a life maker. It's being it's being an art maker. It's being a creator in everything, because then everything becomes infused with that same energy. Right. So it might to somebody seem to be that one thing, and something, because it's typically been seen to be a feminine trait, but it is in some respects, but it's in all of us. Right.
Right.
So
and if you think about it, to this specific example, everyone is a homemaker because everyone creates a space for themselves to live. Mm-hmm. Even if they're homeless, they may do it on a daily basis.
Right. Right. And the thing is, when we, for me, it's like this. Up until probably 5 years ago, 5 or so years ago, maybe a little longer, like cooking was just an essential to me. Right. It was like, what can we do to just get a meal on the table? And that's it. Right.
Check in the box, fill the hole.
Right. And honestly, like, we all, like, my husband and I, he cooked probably more than I did, because I really didn't like it that much. Right. And it was like, because it was just an essential chore. Well, I don't know, about 5 years ago, I don't know what shifted, but it was, I guess my kids became adults and they were in college or whatever. And it was like, oh, I can just do this in a way that I enjoy it now. Right. And I realized the creation in it and the creativity in it, and how you can infuse it with love, and, and how that really shares a beingness with others, when you cook a meal like that, from that place. And so like, it's funny that all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God, you're such a great cook. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing the same things I've always done, except I do it with a different intention now. Right.
Right.
And I find it easy now versus a chore. It's like, okay, I can.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Kids ruined cooking for me.
Right. Kids ruin a lot of things.
Right.
But the key thing here is this, because, and I think, so I was thinking about that this week, and I was like, okay, so really, you're right. And it's like, it's a life maker. Like, what are we doing? Like, I think we need to just come up with a new term for it, like how we saturate our lives in beingness, it's right. Because then it's like everything we do, because I'm like, well, I'm in martial arts too. And it's like, so that's a very big being kind of practice. And it's, there's all this stuff like, how much are you present, as we've talked about so many times, how much are you present in everything you do?
Right. I think that we just need to redefine the word creator, because that's essentially what it boils down to, is that you are a creator, whether it's a creator of your happiness or a creator of your suffering or a creator of your rituals, your habits, your beliefs, your passions, everything.
Well, and so I'll take this moment to put the self-promotion hat on to say, but you got to keep it next to your thing.
I know.
To say, in our Wonderland course, we have a self-responsibility course that's all dedicated to self-responsibility in consciousness.
Which is coming back to being your authentic essence and an authentic creator.
Right. Right. And so whether it's, staining a table and chairs, or whether, it's like all the stuff, or whether it's tending to your yard or your house or your car or whatever, it's all an act. When it all comes from a state of being, it all becomes an act of love. And that is our goal.
Right.
Because it comes from inside here, then not I'm doing this. I'm not doing this so that you will value me, right? Or that you'll pay me, or that like all that kind of stuff. And granted, yes, we do live from a place where we're still like required to have an income, but then we start to be more fluid with how that income comes. It just comes, right? And that takes this entirely different level of trust. Again, another course on our Wonderland program. So that's like, and so the thing to ask yourself when you say that's my passion is, why is it my passion? Like always, like I have come to the place where I always question myself. And it's not to do it with any judgment. It's to say, well, let me look at why this is my motivation, right? And when you can say, well, why is it my passion? Because if you say, well, I like me, because there is a person that I knew, and she was the best baker I have ever met. She was just like so incredible. Like you ask her to whip up anything and she would do it. And she made it into a business, and it was a lucrative business. And it was before I did this, what I do now. And when I was in my marketing business, and I helped her with her marketing, and she got into we got her into Whole Foods and a lot of other healthy stores and stuff. On the East Coast, I think it was at the time. But she had a pretty lucrative business going, right? Here's the funny part. Well, she would always say, well, why do you bake? Because she had here's the irony. She had type 1 diabetes, so she couldn't even eat what she baked. Right. We'd be like, so why do you do it? Well, she would, and she always did it. And it was interesting because I found out that it all was motivated by making other people happy. Right. Which then it's like, well, then is that really your passion? Right.
And is that sustainable?
Is it sustainable? Well, what happened was, and she would say, oh, because I like making other people happy. I like seeing the smile on people's faces when they eat it, which is all external validation.
Right.
So
especially if she was making something that she had to deny herself of.
Right. And so which is also another very masculine.
Right. Sacrifice, throw myself on my sword.
Right. And so, and then she got to a decent sized company where she had a commercial kitchen and staff and, co-packers and all that kind of stuff. And then she's like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. And so it's interesting because when people say, that people say, don't make your passion your business or whatever. The thing is, look at why it's your passion before you do anything with it, because it will exhaust you if it's not truly your passion. If it's coming from a doing standpoint versus a being standpoint, it will exhaust you eventually.
Right.
And
the bottom line is, if it comes from that place of need, is you're spending and exerting all this energy into something that you already have. So of course that's exhausting.
Right. And so just think about that whole, like, what is it that exhausts you? Because that's what I've been looking at within my own business, is like, there are elements that I love that I could do and do and do and do, and I don't care. And there are things that just exhaust me to think about having to do, right? Which then I say, well, then there's the ego part, there's the masculine energy part. And it's like, okay, then how do I align this in integration so that it all aligns in that authentic resonance and that flow of creation from that place of being versus in that place of doing, right? And then all of a sudden it gets much more peaceful.
Right. And restorative versus draining.
Yes. And nourishing. Yes.
So where do we begin? Where do we begin with this?
With the maybe it's where, like, being able to see what where our true passion lies, where our true being lies, right? Allowing ourselves to see that.
Because we are being, so it's just a question of recognizing where that being lies.
In a way of true joy, right?
Yes.
And bliss, right? As I always ask, when I first see people, one of the first questions is I always ask them is, what allows you to express your joy? Like, what is it that, like, I don't even use what brings you joy anymore, because that still, like, is an external thing. It's like, but what allows you to express your joy? What's easy for you? What do you enjoy? So much of it just doesn't feel like, it feels like a meditation almost, right? Because it's so easy, right? And
so innately comes from that place of not even having to think about it.
Right. And so
automatic.
Right. And when people say to me things like, oh, my kids, my spouse, or whatever, I'm like, okay, think again. I'm like, okay, if you were on a desert island and you could not be around any other person, but you could have anything else that you wanted, like, what would that look like? Like, that would allow you to be happy. And a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know, because we're not even programming ourselves here to be able to see that. So a lot of times that takes a little bit of clarity work in itself, is to see, what is my true heart? Where is my true heart and being? Right. Which means, where is my passion from? Like, where's my passion from being? Like, and how do I find that? Maybe that's where
the source.
Yeah. And in a way that's all self-central, coming from inside out, not outside in, saying, oh, it pleases this person or it pleases other people or all that kind of stuff. It's when it comes from inside out, it will always be expansive and self-sustaining. So what is it within you that you feel like you could do 24/7 and never be tired of it, never be like frustrated or whatever, and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna do some more. Like, what is that? What does that look like? And so that's the first step, is having that clarity. And because then the second step is allowing yourself more of it.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like. So maybe we'll do the first two steps today.
Right. I agree.
Because then, like, it's like, okay, because that gives the ego something to, oh, what do I do from that? It's like, well, what does that look like? Okay, well, let's create from that. Let's create from there. So, all right.
Awesome.
Let's do that. Everybody take a deep breath, close your eyes. Oh, as we step out of separation, back into wholeness and oneness. And we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. Okay. That felt so easy.
I felt great.
Did. And it was like it's almost like the descriptions that would come would be one word. It's like, creating, or, there was a whole bunch of things, and it's like, okay, that's where our passions come from, is that central point, you know.
It felt so at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you put on comfy clothes or something like that,
Right.
it just felt so natural, almost like taking off something, but at the same time putting on something, but it's really just discovering what was underneath when you took off the
Right.
discomfort. It
Right.
was blissful.
It was buttery smooth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yummy.
Yes, yummy. We haven't used that one for a while.
Right.
So please pass this on to anyone who could be helped with this. I think right now it's really crucial because, like the finding your passion, like I said, becomes sort of a cliche, and it's like, but make sure the passion we express is the one that comes from that wholeness place,
Right. Right.
that being place, and our doing is motivated from our being versus the other way around. I'm doing this to be this. It's like, if you have that in your head, like what sentence do I fill by saying, if I do this to be this, then it's coming from the ego or the masculine only. And then it's like, but if you're being, and then you're like, okay, and I do this from this, I do
Right.
this because it allows me to express this or embody this. That's the merging of the two in many ways. It's a much more balanced kind of thing. So play with that, pass it on to anyone who you feel needs it, which is pretty much anybody. So
Right. And thanks to all that commented on last week's
yes.
video.
Yep.
Awesome. We love the comments. We love the sharing.
We do. So please continue on that. Share in here, share what you get, share any insights and your experiences, and then come back next week.
Right.
So on that, we'll sign off. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni
signing off on this week's Living Ascension. Have a great one, everyone.